touch it, and it just went black again. It's so annoying. I'm gonna have to talk to YouTube peeps about it. I don't know what's going on.
They're giving us a time limit. They're cracking down on us.
I guess. We're almost done, guys. Bear with us. So we're on page 76. I talked about what he had told me about the evidence. There's no evidence on me that it exists.
Did you say?
Barry Morphew asked Agent Grusing if he could clear him publicly. He said, because that's what I need, because this whole world is freaking, they've trounced me, is what he said, quote. And this is something he mentioned in this interview in March, but also in an interview with me, was that, you know, if I say I don't recall something, and I told you something else, boom, I'm done. I've lied. Mm-hmm. And that's something he asked me. He said, I'm worried if I tell you something, Lauren, and I have told something to investigators, and it's different, then boom, I've lied. And it's like, well, if you're telling me the truth, then there shouldn't be any worry. Sorry again for the technical difficulties. He added, I'm just telling you right now that if I was guilty, I wouldn't hand over weapons to you guys.
He brings that up a lot. He kind of changes the wording a little bit in some of the other ones, but he brings it up a lot that if he was guilty, he wouldn't be doing certain things, like obviously giving over the guns, but he also wouldn't even be talking to the FBI if he was guilty.
And throughout this part of the affidavit, there's all these like interesting photos that they put, and I'm not exactly sure why, because they're black and white and they're hard to see, but
and a lot of them just kind of look like body cam video of like his facial expression or hand gestures, but those are described in the actual wording, so it's just a little odd that the random pictures are kind of thrown in with it.
In this interview in March, he's asking again to the agents like who this affair was with, and saying, was it an old boyfriend? You know, he's really trying. He's like, they didn't know. He was like, did they know each other from high school? Like, he's just digging to try to figure out who Suzanne was having an affair with. I'm on page 78 now. This is when he asked for immunity. If I sit and just open my life to you. He said, you know, Agent Grusing asked, you know, immunity for what, Barry? And Barry said, I think in case somebody falsely convicts me or something. And Agent Grusing says, you won't be falsely convicted.
Yeah. And in this one too, he's talking a lot about how just the investigation in general is taking a toll on him. You know, it's not good for his kids to see him this stressed. He just kind of wants everything to be done with, and he can't live like this. Like, it's just really taking a toll on him.
So it looks like investigators interviewed him again on March 5th, so maybe there's a part 2, so maybe there was 2 separate interviews. Barry asserted that Suzanne's phone would have been found, and that he had intuition about her affair. So now he's saying, oh, I did know about the affair, and that could not recall that he threw. And then he's talking about items that he had thrown away on May 10th, he couldn't recall. And this is when he was shown photos of when he was throwing items away. Yeah. And then also he was shown photos of Suzanne, which he claims that she was drunk the Saturday afternoon. You know, he even said in this interview, he said, I thought from day one you guys had the phone.
Yeah.
And he's concerned that if this information about the affair gets out, that, oh, Barry, you know, found out she had a boyfriend and killed her. This is a quote from Barry.
Yeah. And he said that he had some intuition, but never thought it was a physical thing. So once again, he's admitting that at some point he considered an affair to be a possibility, but never thought that she was actually doing it or that it was physical.
I do think this is interesting when he's talking about when his phone was pinging down at the river during Facebook posts on Friday night. He said that I could have been, I don't remember, I chase critters around the house all the time. There's a bear that got in the garage. Now there's a bear now. and he completely destroyed my garage, and I've been looking for him ever since. He came in the garage. I wasn't going to shoot him, but I was just going to scare him off, and coyotes are always outside. So now he's bringing other animals into this
Mixture.
theory of an animal attack.
Yeah.
This is page 80 of the arrest affidavit.
This one talks a lot about his trip to Broomfield and kind of discussing, you know,
The Garfield
seeing the elk
line.
and stuff. Yeah, and him turning around, making the left onto County Road 225, and seeing the animal and then saying he turned around at Garfield, which the helmet was found on that route.
Here, yeah. He claims that the trash run number 1, he just threw away wrappers and cans. On the third trash run, he claimed that he had to take in his boots because he wanted to keep the laces out, and that's why he threw away the boots, because they were there was holes in them. Okay, now I'm on page 81.
Trash run number 4, same thing, just said that he was taking a whole bunch of trash out of his truck. But in all of these, he said he couldn't remember anything specific as to why he was, throwing certain things away at different locations.
This interview, he also mentioned that maybe Suzanne left and went to Mexico. So maybe this is another theory that, you know, adding that Suzanne doesn't have to go through a border, and wondered if she had, you know, $70,000.
Which he claimed was
Stolen from the garage safe. Yeah. And then he's also mentioning that Suzanne's mind was altered from drugs and alcohol.
And this was Saturday afternoon again when he had mentioned that there was no alcohol that day. She was in a great mood. They were having a great time together.
Now this is March 10th interview with investigators. This interview, Morphew suggests that Suzanne might be in the river. He described again the path across Highway 50 with the elk that walked across. He said if disposed of, hold on, let me get to that point. I'm getting ahead of myself. He said that he thought Sheila would counsel her that marriage is for life, talking about Suzanne's best friend, Sheila Oliver. He said, quote, "I'm a godly man and you better make sure that you want me because it's for life."
And that's what he said to Suzanne when they first got married.
83, we had sex 3 times a day, he said. She gave me the most beautiful card that was heartfelt, talking about Valentine's Day. But that Valentine's Day, Suzanne had claimed she had met Jeff Libler.
And I thought it was interesting because one of the agents told Barry that Suzanne's life with her lover, Jeff, appeared to be more her true life than her life with Barry. So I thought that that was really interesting because, again, a lot of the people that knew them said that they kind of put on this front in public that that's not really how their relationship was.
Barry asked for more information about the lover. And again, Barry Morphew said, Johnny Grusing, the FBI agent, told Barry Morphew that he had still not been cleared. This is March 10th.
I thought it was interesting, too, that he said that he searched for 3 to 5 months and then felt like she was gone, so that's why he stopped. But in previous interviews, he said, you know, she's alive, she's coming back. So he kind of flip-flops between she's dead and then other times, you know, she just ran away and she's coming back.
And then Johnny Grusing even asked him, like, when is a good time to stop searching? And he replied, never.
Yeah.
This is, again, page 83. He said that we have searched every mine shaft in that area. And
at first, they were talking about some of the ones being, you know, either blown up from back in the day or they were plugged. And Grusing asked about some of the vertical shafts, and Barry had mentioned that there was one in the Garfield area that was open, which I thought was very interesting because that's where he went Sunday morning.
Also, I think it's interesting, Barry Morphew had told investigators in March that he'd been hunting the mountain lion for 2 years, and he had seen him hundreds of times, this mountain lion that attacked his wife, allegedly. he said that he's seen on TV shows that where mountain lions had dragged people up a mountain. He said that he's not going to eat her clothes. Her clothes should have been found. Excuse me. So again, Barry's talking about the mountain lion attack in March. This is March again of 2021. This is a few months before he was arrested. And then he switches to, I think she left.
But then immediately says she would never leave her girls.
And then he says maybe I thought she was in the river. And then he asked, I don't understand why the FBI spent $140,000 digging up my job site.
Yeah. And that's the
County Road 105 property east of Salida.
Yep.
So now I'm on page 85, talking about, I don't have much highlighted on that one. It just says, saying that there's no evidence that, because evidence doesn't exist. Yep. 86. This language, he said this in my interviews with him. He says, I'm telling you right now. He would use, I'm telling you right now. I mean, he would say, I'm telling you exactly what I did. I'm telling you. He would use that phrase a lot in my interviews too.
And this one, he just talked a lot about the elk and deer and different things like that, and how he would get their horns off and keep them in different things of that sort.
On page 88, he says, Suzanne accused me of having cameras in the house and watching her every move. And there was a camera that was missing that investigators could not find.
I thought it was interesting. He said that, again, he's talking about just wanting the investigation to be over. And he says, whatever we have to do to get this over, I need it over for me. And then he says, even if she comes back or even if we find her alive, she doesn't want me anymore. So why should I put all of this, all of my heart, all my love into this relationship if she doesn't want me anymore? So it kind of just sounds like he's implying even if she came back, he doesn't want any part of this relationship.
He did speak about a 2013 incident where Suzanne almost died from cleaning the shower with bleach and peroxide, and the fumes interacted with her chemo and put her mind into an anxiety mode, is what he said. He said he admits that he's a workaholic and a huntaholic and cheated her out of what a woman needs emotionally. He said he was never home and worked daylight until dark, going selfishly hunting. Suzanne wrote in her notes she talked to Barry about divorce as early as 2019, according to Grusing. And of course, Barry Morphew says, I don't recall ever talking about divorce.
She used to say to Sheila that he won't hear talk about divorce. And Barry would always say, she never brought it up to me. She never said anything to me. But then he also said that if she were to say something to him, he would say, I'm not discussing this because it's never going to happen, which later we'll get to. He says that if she would have brought divorce up to him, he would have had a completely different response.
Agent Grusing asked, why did you delete some calls from your phone on May 4th? He says, I don't recall deleting any calls. He showed deletion of calls to Dan Monex, the Collegiate Peaks Bank, and others. And again, Barry Morphew just says, I don't recall.
I think it's interesting because he talks a lot about why he deleted certain things, because he wants to protect the girls. He doesn't want the girls to see those text messages, He didn't want them finding out about the affair. But then he admitted, at least on one occasion, that when him and Suzanne were fighting and Suzanne brought up Barry possibly having an affair, he intentionally called the girls down to bring them into the fight because he wanted somebody on his side. And I just thought that was really interesting. And he said, Suzanne never let that go. She never forgave me for it, and he regretted it. But I just thought it was interesting that in that moment, he brought the girls into an altercation with him and Suzanne, but would delete text messages from his phone that the girls probably weren't even looking for.
Page 91, they talk a little bit about the airplane mode that he did. Grusing asked what events made Barry decide to turn it on and off, and Barry Morphew said, just not that I'm doing anything wrong, but just trying to get her to say, oh, I couldn't track you.
Yeah.
Or
he pretty much just wanted Suzanne to admit that she was tracking his phone and what he was doing.
When asked about the porn that was on his phone, he said, I never went to a porn site. I'm against watching porn. I do not watch porn. Have I looked at a naked woman on one of those sites? I have before. But if there was ever a site that was searching for a woman, it was not me. Mm-hmm. So he admits to the porn because he said he saw a naked women on one of those sites.
This also gets brought up a little later when referring to some sites being shown on his phone.
Later in this interview, he's begging again for agents to clear him. Mm-hmm. 92, he talks about people doing a grid search, looking for anything that could be a dig site, Barry site, a piece of clothing. Another theory he throws out is a drifter taking Suzanne, or a hit and run. Mm-hmm. On this, now to an interview on April 5th, there was 26 exhibits in front of Barry, including photos Suzanne sent to Libler, cell phone data, search photos, timelines of activities from May 9th and May 10th, and surveillance photos. So I'm on page 93. Mm-hmm. Agent Harris said that agents are concerned about Barry's end-of-life planning steps to include selling off assets, his statements of not being around anymore, and his weight loss. Yeah.
And then they start talking about Shoshana, and he says, she's just a really good friend. There's nothing sexual between them.
There's nothing sexual going on with her.
Yeah.
They talk about the Antlers Hotel stay that was on Valentine's weekend, which Antlers Hotel is in Colorado Springs. They have surveillance video of them checking in. The Shoshana Dark, I think that's how you say it. Yeah. Shoshana Dark is seen with a bouquet of flowers in her hand, and Barry Morphew carrying her luggage. Yeah. They stayed there a few nights.
And he says the girls know about them, and they know that they're friends. He said there are some nights where he stays there really late, but she's just a special person. But he also said that meeting her was God's way of answering his prayer of, please give me something.
And he claims that they met on October 25th, but one of Shoshana's friends told investigators that they met much earlier in July. Yeah. And she told investigators this information in December, or whoever the friend of Shoshana is. I don't know if it was a guy or a girl.
And he says that he's definitely, when referring to, the suicide and selling off the assets, he said he's definitely thought about suicide, but that he couldn't do that to the girls, and then the selling off the assets is just for him as an easy way to get out of Salida, to just leave and kind of separate himself from everything.
Then they talk about on page 94 about an incident where Sheila Oliver was at their Colorado home, and she was visiting in 2019, and Barry was supposedly in Arizona on a hunting trip. He came home early. He freaked the girls out because he parked further up the driveway and then walked down and was
looking through the house,
looking through the house, and it scared Sheila and Suzanne, and so they called the Cushmans to come over, and which is a neighbor, and even called authorities, I think. And when Agent Grusing asked Barry why he parked so far away, he said, just because I wanted to see if they were there. It's like, why don't you just park in the garage, or the garage,
He said that he smelled bad or something and needed to shower, and he was just pulling up to see if they were there because he didn't want to show up looking and smelling like that. Yeah. So he was just trying to see if they were home, but didn't actually pull in his own driveway.
When Barry was shown the line that, the can't be healthy and stay in the relationship, as far as the list of grievances that Suzanne had wrote, he was asked if she told him that, and he said she had not. And Agent Harris told Barry about the recording from the pen when Suzanne said Barry controlled what she would eat or wear, and Barry interjected, say, "But I've never done that. I've never controlled her like that." She thought I had cameras in the deer eyes of the mount. So there's in the home, in the Morphew home in Puma Path, there was all these deers that I guess
Like the deer heads, yeah.
deer heads, and so Suzanne claimed that maybe there was cameras in the deer's eyes.
Yeah.
So now I'm on page 96. I don't have anything highlighted on that one. Okay, this was interesting. Agent Grusing said the purchase was in February 2020, and Barry said, "Yeah, if that was it, I thought I was buying fraud protection and I didn't know what I was buying, but obviously if my memory recalls that I was buying right, I think Suzanne thought I was doing something, secretly, which I wasn't."
And this is talking about a VPN on something?
Yes.
On somebody's credit card?
Yeah.
A name's scratched out, so I don't know whose.
Suzanne, I guess, had complaints regarding security cameras, asking Barry if he removed the DVR, the recording device for the home system, that wires seemed disconnected.
Barry claims that...
She sabotaged him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did mention, too, in the preliminary hearing that when they looked at the wires, it was only Suzanne's DNA that was on them.
Yeah. Agent Grusing also asked Barry if he had synced the cameras from his house to his phone so that he could look through from his phone. Barry said, "Under my best recollection, all of my cameras were in my safe because I never use cameras in hunting season. Every once in a while, I'd put on the driveway just to see if cars are coming and going." And that was the end of the quote, really. I guess agents had tried to find Barry chasing the chipmunks on the cameras recovered, and they could not. Yeah. This is page 97. On 98, he says, "I've shot 85 chipmunks at my house, and when I'm bored, I shoot chipmunks." This is also the page where they talk about the domestic violence between Barry and Suzanne. He said that Agent Grusing had asked Barry if Suzanne had ever made a statement, "just wrestled free," and Barry said, "I never constricted her with my arms, never. And if we were ever in an argument, I would push up against her, maybe, and then she would maybe slip around me, but I have never grabbed her and constricted her. And I told you the one incident where I struck her, that was the only time in my entire life where I ever did anything. So if she's saying there was anything physical besides that, it's absolutely 100% not true." And the part where he says 100% not true is a statement. That phrase is what he said in my interviews a lot. There's multiple times he says, "I don't recall," when asked about how many times he was in the garage porch, I guess.
There was one part where he said, "I've shot deer from that little breezeway from between the garage and the laundry room," and that picture's at the very end of the affidavit. And the reason that they kind of pointed that part out, at the bottom it says the breezeway is located directly beside the lawn chairs where Barry earlier said Suzanne was sunbathing when he came home at 2:44 when she provided Jeff Libler with her last proof of life. So that picture of her laying out sunbathing is directly under that breezeway window where he said he often shoots chipmunks from. So they noted that and then showed a picture of the back of the house and the back of the affidavit to kind of show you the location of those two for reference.
These are the photos that he was shown of Suzanne, like selfies that she had taken, and in all of them he says that she looks intoxicated on every picture.
And those are pictures she sent to Jeff Libler.
Also on page 100, Grusing showed Barry a photo of the .22 round in his bedroom, asking Barry if he knew where that came from. And he said, "I don't." He guessed it came from his pocket when Suzanne was folding laundry. I'm on 101. He talked briefly about his concern of getting a divorce, saying that a friend's marriage blew apart because of Facebook contact with an old boyfriend. And he said she had it, contacted somebody, and here it is about her having an affair. 102. The last thing he claimed was remembered her breathing. And I heard her do. Okay. Barry said no. Last thing I heard her do was snoring. So that was page 102. Page 103. Just probably before we went to sleep after we had sex was the last time he saw or heard from Suzanne prior to that. So I underlined a lot of the times where he said I don't recall in red. I don't know if you can see that in the arrest affidavit that I took notes on. Okay.
There was they mentioned too the Saturday night before he was supposed to leave for Broomfield, they talked about how he had a lot of activity at his truck and kind of asked him what that was about, and he said he was just, getting his tools ready and preparing to go to the job site in the morning. And then the agents kind of asked him because that night he said that he had cooked steaks for them for dinner, and Agent Grusing, kind of implied that because of all the activity on his truck and the time frame of which he said they ate dinner, it didn't really give him a whole lot of time to grill steaks when there was so much going on in his truck at that time.
On page 105, he mentions that they must have had sex after 9:25 p.m. Agent Grusing asked Barry to review a series of 20 photos of him walking to McDonald's trash can. This is on page 106. This agent showed Barry Morphew the photo of a SG-11 mini DV operating manual for a camera, which they could never find. I guess this manual was in the bathroom drawer at the Morphew home. This is page 107, so there's a missing camera that they could never find.
He said that he was going to use it for hunting purposes, but he could never, he kind of said it was crap and didn't work, so he ended up just throwing away or didn't really remember where he put it, but he never used it because he couldn't get it to turn on.
And also in this interview, Agent Grusing said that considering the evidence, it does not appear that Suzanne chose to disappear.
And then Barry says, I've never thought that, which completely contradicts him saying multiple times that she left on her own.
Yeah. So Barry Morphew in Exhibit 23, Barry was shown the photos of nude women and sexual encounter dating sites recovered from his cell phone. He said he never had a dating website, and the images and websites recovered must have been from pop-up ads when he was viewing pornography. So now he's saying he has viewed pornography. Agents agreed such images and dating sites could have come from Barry's viewing porn on his phone.
And he even said, you can obviously see that I never looked for a girl on my phone or online, but one of the searches, because we didn't mention them, but one of the ones that was decent enough was a search that said find a cute girl near Salida.
Barry was asked if he had told the daughters about the affair at the same time, and he said, yep, I just sat him down and I said, girls, I don't want to ever keep anything from you, and I don't want you to think bad about your mother, but I think this is important for you to know. And I told him that they cried hard. They got angry, but I think it was the right thing to do. But this contradicts Barry's earlier statement that same day to the FBI that he had not told his girls about the affair. This is page 110 of the affidavit.
And then they started talking about how from July to October of 2020, after she had been declared missing, he was still texting her phone, saying things like, I love you, I miss you, I'm not gonna stop looking for you. And when agents asked why he was doing that, he said that he was hoping that maybe if she had her phone, she could see them, but it was more of just a way for him to kind of cope with it and deal with what was happening.
So when Agent Grusing said that the issue investigators have with the river is that Suzanne's helmet being placed away from the bike, and that placed a possible, it was like a possible diversion and indicates of foul play, and Barry agreed, yeah.
Because they asked where he where people should start looking, because clearly he didn't agree with some of the other spots that they had searched, and he said the river, so he kind of stuck with that theory towards the end that she was somewhere in the river.
So this, now moving on to April 22nd interview with Barry Morphew, and this is when they tell Barry that Suzanne was not conscious Saturday evening, May 9th, or Sunday morning, early morning, and Barry agreed with that, saying yeah. And he agreed with investigators that the evidence in the case makes him look bad, but it's, again, in God's hand. Okay, so page 112. I don't have much highlighted on this page.
One of the things that I thought was interesting was they talked about the $30,000 from the GoFundMe page for Suzanne. And, you know, the agents were asking him where that money went, and he said, I don't recall where money went, but like I said, if a lot of that money I paid George, I'm assuming George Davis, $4,000 because he stopped working. I paid a lot of things out of that money, but I don't recall a lot of what it was. So I just thought that was really interesting that the money from that page was being used for his personal purposes.
That's a lot of money to be unaccounted for, to not know exactly what you spent. And this is not just money that one person gave him. It was hundreds of people that initially was wanting to help. People in Indiana that knew Suzanne, and family friends and family members. And I know a lot of people was curious as to what happened to Trevor Knoll, who first really pushed it out there at the very beginning. Like, why did he disappear? Why did he stop talking about Suzanne on the in the public eye, and he kind of just disappeared? And that was one of Barry Morphew's nephews. And he has not. People have asked me if he's been in court, and he has not been in court at all. Again, they show a lot of photos of Barry Morphew in interviews with investigators. This is from April 22nd, how he's, standing, what he's doing with his hands.
One of the things that one of the agents, kind of told Barry is that they're trying to just get the most accurate picture of what happened, the most, accurate timeline, and that one of the biggest things that they look for is inconsistencies in behavior. So obviously on Saturday night, or even Saturday afternoon, her not responding to text messages, not calls, not sending text messages or calls. And, they said that she was pretty consistent about texting Jeff either good night or good morning. And the fact that none of that happened, they said it seemed like something happened to her phone or her or both, because she wasn't saying anything, and Barry agreed.
On page 117, agents Grusing and Harris, Barry refers to them as God-fearing men, and he says that, quote, us three are a lot alike. So he's kind of making buddy-buddy with them.
He also mentioned, the idea of divorce being brought up by Suzanne was mentioned to him again, and he said that if she would have brought that up to him, he said that I'm a good-hearted guy. I want my girls to be protected. I would say, I don't agree with this. I love you. Here's your half. I would have wrote her a check for half and let her on her way, which obviously completely contradicts some of his other statements of saying he would never even consider divorce. If you're with me, it's for life. So I just thought that was really interesting that he completely flip-flopped that.
Other topics covered in the audit that they talked to Barry about was the purchase of the VPN, Barry's deleting calls from his call logs, why Barry initially thought his big argument with Suzanne was on Friday rather than on Wednesday, evidence through Libler's messages of other arguments daily that week, how long Suzanne was distant and loving, if Barry and Suzanne were separate on Wednesday and Friday evening based on their cell phones, discrepancies in his calls to Gene Mormon, Suzanne's dad, and evidence pointing to Barry sending the Facebook friends request.
So on this one,
which one?
go ahead. Yeah, same page. Yeah.
The purchase and disposal of the mini camera. You're asking if he could have thrown away those items, or what he did with that. What were you gonna say about it?
So in this next little part, it just kind of explains a lot of him, changing his story. So he was shown a map of some of his movements, and on Saturday there were a few times where he didn't come up the driveway. He was kind of walking around the house in the trees and in the woods and stuff. And in one of them, he had mentioned that he was looking for a turkey out around their house, and that was around the same time that he said that he was supposed to be having soup with Suzanne for lunch. And then there was another part where he had been asked if he shot the tranquilizer gun on Saturday, and he said absolutely not, which again contradicts him saying that he was shooting chipmunks that day. So there was just a lot of inconsistencies that were being pointed out to him towards the end when they were kind of going over, these are some of the statements you've said, but then these are also some of the statements you've said that don't really match up.
I'm wondering if, like, what he was doing near the river, like, was he collecting his game cameras, or was he putting them out? He said, what he said about his daughter's turkey he was trying to find. He on page 119, he talked about George Davis and him searching the mine shafts for Suzanne and Garfield.
And that was just him and George alone.
Yeah, a lot of the searches were. When asked about Suzanne's leather journal that was not recovered, he said he did not recall that she had one. But a lot of friends of hers, as
even
well
the
as
daughters.
I think even one of the daughters had mentioned a journal to look for in the home.
That she always had it along with her Bible and something else.
The
But all three.
The Al-Anon book.
Yeah, that they were always together.
Okay. Okay.
He admitted to submitting the election for Trump too, and that he didn't realize it was illegal.
In this interview. This is April 22nd, right? I'm on page 122 now. He said, quote, I've told you everything truthfully, both you guys, so it's in God's hands, and allowed this whole thing to happen. Again, blaming God. I thought I'd be cleared in 2 months. Why are you dragging me through this? God wanted to protect the girls from heartache. This is just snippets of what he said to investigators. But it's interesting that, again, he's still not cleared, but he thought he would have been cleared after 2 months. Agent Harris offers again that Barry could take a polygraph, and Barry said that he would pray about it and that he needs to get going. Again, this is in April, so he's asked again to take a polygraph. And
the next part is talking about the tranquilizer, and they interviewed a field veterinarian. And again, we kind of talked about this when they brought it up in the preliminary hearing, but she had mentioned that a female of Suzanne's size, had, the tranq dart been used on her, would likely be fully sedated from a dose in 8 to 12 minutes and in complete sedation from 2 to 8 hours. And a female would likely run for 2 to 3 minutes, and then she would feel a little bit drunk, and that her breathing would be difficult and it would sound like a snore. And that was something that they really harped on in the preliminary hearing, was the fact that Barry kept saying the last thing he remembered was Suzanne snoring in bed. And this lady said that if she had been hit with the tranq dart, that's what her breathing would sound like.
We talked briefly earlier about Shoshana Dark, the woman that allegedly is having a relationship with Barry Morphew. They claim that they met each other in October. A friend of Shoshana's say that they met way earlier, let's say in July. Barry claimed that they weren't having a sexual relationship, but this friend who reported it said that they were. What else? And this is who we're talking about. I don't know if you can see.
And they had said during their trip to the hotel on Valentine's Day that Barry had turned his airplane mode on for pretty much the entire trip that they were gone.
So this is the surveillance photo from the affidavit of the two in a hotel in Colorado Springs for Valentine's Day. So then it goes into a summary. So we've kind of gone over everything. But something that was in some snippets of the summary that I thought was really interesting that they said is that by around 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, May 9th, it had become clear that Barry could not control Suzanne's insistence on leaving him, and he resorted to something he has done his entire life: hunt and control Suzanne like he had hunted and controlled animals. I think that's remember the 10th item on the defense attorney's 10 list of things that they thought, would prove that Barry, it's just not that he's innocent. In closing arguments. This, I think, was number 10 on the list. He said, in the summary, he said, Barry used alcohol, drugs, and chemo throughout his interviews to describe Suzanne's independence and distancing from him, saying it was every day that last week. Barry finally blamed God for Suzanne's death after being informed of the affair as a form of judgment on her, and has stated repeatedly that God allowed this to happen. Barry made very little attempt to contact Suzanne on his way home from Broomfield or look around his house or the bike scene because he already knew what happened to her. This is, again, the arrest affidavit in the summary portion. This is one of the last pages, of page 126. Deputy Brown commented that I started to question if something criminal had occurred, as it looked like the bike was purposely thrown in this location. And that is from day one that was said. So that is the arrest affidavit. I mean, also they included attachments of exhibits like Barry Morphew's phone every time it went on airplane mode, a aerial photo of the Puma Path home. They also showed the breezeway photo, and where, they had arrows of where Suzanne was allegedly sunbathing, the last known proof of life that she had taken. And then also they had shown pinpoints of where Barry Morphew's phone appeared to had pinned the afternoon of Saturday, May 9th. And then also they showed a picture of the door frame that it looked like there was a crack in it, and they asked the previous homeowners, was this crack there before before you sold the house? They said no. The previous homeowners said separately that they suspected Barry killed Suzanne after hearing the news of her disappearance based upon multiple observations they made of Barry during and after the sale of the house. And these two individuals, they made these accounts separately, not, and this is, looks like an interview in November of 2020. So yeah, that's the arrest affidavit. Let's try to answer some questions real quick before we.
Somebody just asked if anybody either in the affidavit or in the prelim mentioned the charge of tampering or messing with a deceased body, if that was ever brought up.
They didn't say that specifically, but because that Suzanne, the last known photo of her was at the Morphew home, and then there's no body at the Morphew home, that obviously someone had to have moved her body from the Morphew home. Any other questions? Question, Lauren. Is there?
That's
Oh, okay. People are asking if the prosecutor has enough evidence to convict Barry. I mean, this is just for probable cause, this arrest affidavit, and the case is ongoing. It's Suzanne's body still has not been found, and they're still following up on tips. There was a lot of evidence in here, like the Bobcat data, the GPS data wasn't mentioned, but they obtained the search warrant for it. There's also evidence from Suzanne's Range Rover that they didn't collect either. So I think there's still a lot more work to be done, and I think they are doing that. Someone's asking if the judge has ever gone hunting with Barry. I don't know if that's true. Someone's asking, finally catch a live. Well, this is our third live tonight because all our previous videos just went black, and then we tried to get back on and it kind of kicked us out. And so I apologize for all the technical issues that we've had.
So somebody asked if they found an Apple Watch or if Suzanne even had one. That I don't know, but I know that that was one thing that was brought up at the very, very beginning. I'm pretty sure in some of her pictures that she posted of her on her bike rides, she had headphones in, either AirPods or something like that, and a lot of those you typically can track, especially if they're hooked to, you know, an Apple account. And that was something I don't remember them ever finding. So that was kind of up in the air, as well as, you know, when she goes on these rides, she takes her phone, she takes headphones, and none of those were ever recovered.
Someone's asking if the cleaning lady was Shoshana that I interviewed early on, and it was not. The person who I interviewed that was a house cleaner in that area, she is, I believe, from Jamaica, and she is not Shoshana Dark. So, what did that one say? Is there a question?
Somebody was asking if they think we'll be called as witnesses because of the interview we did with him.
I don't know. They might just play the interview. How do you guys, how is this guy walking around? Any idea where to even start for the body? Do you think he will ever tell the truth? I don't know.
He keeps telling investigators to look in the river. That's the only location he's really given them as far as where to search next.
My question for Barry Morphew, if he is watching this, or if someone he knows is watching this, is going to talk to him, my question to him is, are you searching for Suzanne? And where are you searching? Have you searched since you've gotten out of jail? Because you said that you're never going to stop searching. And, you know, the daughters remain by his side and supporting him, and my question to them is, you know, what do they think happened to their mom? If they, you know, obviously don't think their dad had anything to do with it, you know, and my other question is, like, why did they stay silent for so long? You know, we're hearing from the Gabby Petito case. I mean, the family immediately got on the news and really tried to get the word out of their daughter missing. And I just wonder why the daughters stayed so silent for so long. So those are a couple questions I have for them.
Somebody keeps asking, when did Barry find out about Jeff?
Jeff Puckett?
Libler.
Jeff Libler. Well, he claims he didn't find out until January, until when FBI agents brought this to him. But there was times before that he was accusing other people of having an affair with Suzanne. Anyone else? Questions? People are asking, do you think the daughters will have to testify? I do. I think the daughters will be called by the defense, though, which then gives the state cross-examination for them. And so they can ask them questions about the initial days following Suzanne's disappearance and how their dad acted, and, you know, the last things. I mean, we don't even know the last conversations the daughters had with Suzanne and the last text messages between the two and things like that.
Somebody asked about media coverage for the trial, as far as, will there be a camera in there? Will it be live streamed?
Great question. Right now, we don't know. We don't know that. There is a motions hearing on November 9th, and one of the motions that was filed by the defense is the publicity of the pre-trial. So we were supposed to be able to get video of him entering his plea, but he entered the plea during the preliminary ruling, and so we didn't get video of him. If you, I mean, the latest video that you can see of him walking out of jail and walking in and out of the probation's office, you can tell just from, if you compare that photo versus the mugshot. And then even before that, a year before that, his plea video. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you can see the kind of how, of how much he lost weight and how much he's changed in over a year.
Yeah. Somebody asked about the spy pen. They did not play any recordings of it.
They tried, but we could not understand it, and the court could not understand it. So
because it's in Barry's truck, so it was very, very muffled, and you could hardly understand what was being played. But they really, if I remember correctly, only played like one quick clip.
Mm-hmm. Someone's asking about what changed my mind about going to the... My mind was never changed about going to the search. I wanted to go to the search. There were things that happened a day before the search. I had my bags packed, and things happened, and it was just for my safety for me to not be there. I think that was the major thing. So, yeah. Can they legally clean the recording up for the trial? Clean the recording.
Do you mean like almost like redact
the spy
stuff
pen?
or?
I think they're like enhancing. They're gonna just try to probably play the enhanced version for the jury during the trial.
Oh, Tyson being called to testify.
Mm-hmm. Are Jeff and wife still together? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I know that his wife deleted her Facebook. Yeah, if people are just joining, I went through the affidavit with the highlights, things I had experienced through the year and a half of this case. I talked about a little bit about my interactions with Barry Morphew and my interactions with Mary Branson, Jeff Puckett, Morgan Gentile, and things like that. Trying to see if we can see any more. We'll answer a couple more.
And if you missed anything, this is part 3.
Yeah,
because YouTube kept cutting us off.
Yeah, we have
so
2
to watch
other
the full
videos.
Thing, start from number 1.
Do you know when Jeff Puckett was paid for the Broomfield job? I do not, Teresa. I'm sorry. Someone's asked if I was threatened. Yes, I have been threatened. How are the local folks dealing with him being out? That's a good question. I spoke with a couple this last week. I've gotten some calls that they just don't feel comfortable. I mean, one person called me saying, like, did he get his driver's license back? And I said, yes, Barry Morphew did get his driver's license back. He did not get his passport, so he cannot leave the country. He's not supposed to even leave Chaffee County unless he has to meet with his attorneys. He has an ankle monitor, and so his attorneys are in Denver, so he can leave Chaffee County if he's meeting up with his attorneys. And also to get maintenance work on an ankle monitor.
Has the Mormon family talked to the daughters, do you know?
Not recently. I believe one of the last times was when Gene Mormon, Suzanne's dad, was still alive. And so that was quite a while ago.
Do you know if Andy ever met up with them when he did the search? When he was here for the search?
No.
He didn't?
I think Andy saw the daughters and wanted to talk with them, But as far as getting to sit down and talk with them, he wasn't able to.
Gotcha.
Someone's asking if he's already been able to drive up to Denver. I
would
don't
assume
know.
no. The judge made it very clear that he was not allowed to leave Chaffee County.
Yeah. Suddenly dig the bounty hunter is in Florida right now. Oh, the bounty hunter. Yeah.
Oh, dog bounty hunter, yeah.
Can you imagine I'm shocked.
So they had mentioned that a big reason the affidavit was sealed so long was to protect the girls, and because there was a lot of information that they just didn't want getting out into the public because there was personal information, you know, the girls were included in there and different things of that sort. But the prosecution had mentioned when they were asking for it to be unsealed, the day Barry got bond, that the reason they were okay with it being unsealed now is because a large portion of what was included in there was already talked about in the preliminary hearing, so there wasn't really anything in there that they needed to keep secret anymore.
Someone asked if I was threatened again and what was said. And one of my interviews I did with Barry Morphew, he said, I'm going to come after you when we find my wife. And it's just one thing that he said. But there was other threats from people I didn't even know. There was threats from acquaintances to Barry Morphew. So, I mean, it happens when you cover stories like this. So the people that need to know about them know about those threats. So, yeah. Someone's asking if there was a damning piece of evidence that the DA is holding back. Great question. I mean, I think there's evidence that wasn't in the affidavit. I think there was evidence that wasn't said in the preliminary hearing. I think they're still obviously working to find Suzanne so that they can bring the family of Suzanne's closure and also have more evidence against whoever they think did this. Anything else? Let's do one more question before we call it good. We've been on this for quite a while.
Do you think Barry is watching this?
Do I? I hope he has better things to do. I hope he's hanging out with his daughters and, making up for lost time. So I hope not. That's my answer to that. Well, all right. I think that was a good...
Yeah.
Did you want to answer that question?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this. Again, if you missed some of our previous videos because they got cut off and there was crazy technical issues tonight, please go back and watch our previous two videos. We went from page 1 of the affidavit and went through 129 pages of it.
Yep.
If you haven't read it, go read it. We just highlighted a few points in it, new information that we hadn't heard from during the preliminary hearing. So please go watch our videos again and read the arrest affidavit for Barry Morphew. And again, he's presumed innocent until a jury finds him guilty or not guilty. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday night. Now I don't know how to